These were the images where I left off before spring break. The feedback that resonated with me most was the question, do I solve the technical aspects I brought up, like the idea of a glitch or a darkening screen, or do I investigate the playfulness of the characters and their worlds? I chose to go with the latter. I first began by working again with the marble paper. I tried to lean into my letter's playfulness by imagining it in a state of euphoria. Then I created a wavy version of the A to match the background and used color gels to get a blurred effect. I tried the maximalist approach, adding a second style of marbled paper to differentiate between the two digital worlds. I reviewed the images, but nothing jumped out at me. For me, they're too loud and overwhelming, and I wasn't sure where I could intervene. I looked at some other work for inspiration and came across these images by Philip Maisel, who, it turns out, is actually an instructor at CCA. Several aspects of this work stood out to me. The more muted color palette, the hard lines created by object placement, and the mirror and use of reflection. The mirror reflection reminded me of my use of the iPad, and I wondered how I could create something similar. I began building out the new world, trying different materials and setups. As I added new elements, I ensured their placement responded to existing material. I was happy with the direction these images were heading. I started to envision these were scenes from an office still life when people had left their desks. The digital elements of the screen came to life in 3D space and interacted with the office supplies. Again, this image isn't perfect. The reflection I had imagined from the iPad wasn't quite working out like a true reflection would, but I enjoyed working in this slow-paced way, adding in elements individually. I continued to work this way over the next couple of days, trying to envision different scenarios where the letters came out of the iPad and into real space. The scenarios I imagined only partially worked out as I thought they would. Here I had an idea of my letter A emerging out of the flattened iPad. I cut the top off, only to have it resemble a skewed H for the remainder of my exercises. I continued on, though, trying to duplicate the reflections or angles I had imagined in my head. And at some point, I decided just to lean into the mismatched quality of the work. I used the same techniques I discovered in previous weeks, building elements out of the screen and focusing on alignment and lighting. I also tried to eliminate as many of the shadows as I could. I wanted the work to appear flat and disorienting. I'll consider these two images my finals this week, though maybe not for this assignment. Thinking back, my initial motivation for this week was to investigate the playfulness of the characters and their worlds. I have done that, and I consider these worlds that I created this week far more entertaining and engaging than the minimalist approach I've taken in weeks prior. The flatness and rigid elements of objects within the space feel both puzzling and satisfying. I also enjoy the conversation quality the image on the right suggests because of each character's positioning. That said, there are also missing elements from last week's work, like the use of the z-axis and truly building out letter forms over multiple screens that could have enhanced the surrealist quality I was aiming for. If I were to continue with these images, and I might, these would be the elements I would focus on incorporating. Thank you.